Hello and welcome to this MyBlend conversation. We're very excited to be here with Mrs. Maynard and Colin and Morgan, and we're just going to talk a little bit about Mrs. Maynard's class and some things that she's been doing in recent years. I'm Dave, I'm an instructional designer with the MyBlend program at Michigan Virtual University, and I had the pleasure of meeting Mrs. Maynard at McCall this year and joining her session where she was talking about the goods and the bads of flipped instruction. So real quick, Colin and Morgan, do you want to say hello? We're going to tap into your perspective too a little bit.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, glad to have you guys and glad to have you as well, Mrs. Maynard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and just giving us a glimpse into some of the great things you're doing. So real quick, what subject and grade level do you teach, and what school are you at, and how long have you been teaching?
I have been teaching for 16 years at Creekside Middle School. It's located in Zeeland, Michigan. I am an 8th grade math teacher. I teach right now this year 3 sections of 8th grade math and 2 sections of high school geometry, but that's our 8th grade advanced class.
Okay.
So all 8th grade.
And Colin and Morgan, you guys are in 8th grade?
Yep.
Great. Cool. So before we get started, I wanted to tap a little bit into Mrs. Maynard, what it was that both inspired you to go into teaching itself, as well as maybe your inspiration for blending your classroom and flipping your classroom.
I went into teaching probably because my mom was a teacher, and that's what I knew and loved from the beginning. I don't know a day that I ever didn't want to. I thought for a little while I wanted to be in operations research, but that was about 2 weeks worth in college. But it's just always something I've loved. It just kind of comes natural, is helping people and trying to get them to understand stuff differently. The whole inspiration behind flipping my classroom and changing probably came through being part of a tech committee for the last couple of years in Zeeland and seeing different ways of teaching and different models and different best practices. And that was led by Steve Bronius, our tech director at the time, that just really got people to think outside the box. And then there was a couple people in Zeeland that started doing stuff. Tony DeLora, Sean Wyckoff, they kind of started showing things, and it was kind of like, okay, I'll jump on. And then Caitlin Grubb, who student taught with me last year, came back from a conference all fired up about wanting to do stuff with video, and I'd really only done it with reading and explorations, and she kind of pushed me off the cliff, and we went down the road of this flipped instruction with video, and here we are today. So this is my first full year doing it, so I'm kind of curious at the end of the year where kids are at, since that's how they have been taught the entire year. And that's kind of my story with that.
Sure, yeah, and hopefully that landing after being pushed off the cliff was a trampoline sort of experience.
Sure.
But
sure.
we're excited to hear more about some of the advantages and affordances you've been experiencing, as well as the challenges. And that's what I really appreciated a great deal about your session at McCall, is hearing both of those perspectives. So real quick, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what kinds of things you've been doing, I wanted to thank you for bringing in a couple students, Morgan and Colin, to hear from their perspective on what this has been like for them. And you know, Morgan and Colin, I'm just curious, what has this been like? Has this been a big change for you compared to other classes that you've had in the past? And what's been your overall experience so far in this course?
Okay, well, at first it was a little difficult for me because it was like backwards, but now that we've gotten used to it, it's just something that we do every time, so it's pretty easy now, and I think it's easier than it was to learn.
I would say that it's a big change, but it's something different. Kids may get bored doing the same thing every day in every class, So I think it's a change for kids to do something different and learn a different way.
Great. Morgan, you said it's kind of backwards. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Usually in classes, it seems like they like give you notes and stuff, and you take notes in class, and they teach you the lesson. But in this one, you take notes out of class, and then instead of having homework out of the book, you do more homework inside the classroom, so it's classwork.
And that's similar for you as well, Colin?
Yeah, I would agree. It's
Okay.
backwards, like she said.
Had you experienced anything like this before this class?
No, I haven't.
Has it changed how you go about learning in any way?
I would say it's a little bit, because like when you learn in class, you do homework at home, as it's called homework, and you would get stuck or something like that. When you do it in class, you can just ask questions because Miss Maynard's there.
Yeah, and you also have other peers to talk to and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said at first it was kind of a challenge. What did you find to be challenging about it for you?
Well, at first it was a challenge for me because listening to notes, I had some questions at first, but then I realized that you can email her, you can still like contact her, and as soon as you get into class with in-class work and everything we do, it helps understand it too.
Yeah, I agree. Like when you do your notes, you may be confused, but she goes to the video still. You go through the video and you end it. But when you get into class and you're doing your questions on your in-class work, you can just ask Miss Maynard, and it makes a lot more sense, even if you're confused during your notes.
Oh,
Yeah.
and at the beginning of each hour, we usually go through our summary and question, which also helps because you can ask the questions like that you have about the notes to your peers, and they can answer for you.
Oh, so you are even experiencing during the in-class time the benefits of bouncing ideas off your fellow classmates?
Yeah.
Cool. That sounds exciting. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, it sounds like you're watching videos at home,
Right.
with some direct instruction there. Are you doing anything else online at home?
Depending on what you get done in class, like usually I finish my in-class work and then work on my quick checks, which is an online kind of short quiz to get you ready for a quiz or just to see how you know the material.
Great. And the quick checks, can you tell me what those are like real quick?
It's usually a 5-6 question quiz, I guess you would say, about the section that you just learned the night before. And you have to get a certain percent on it. Usually it's an 80%. If you don't get an 80% on it, you have to retake it.
And you can retake it as many times as you need until you get that 80%, is that right? Awesome. Very cool. And how about what it's like for you when you're in the class? How does it compare to other classes that you're in when you're actually in the classroom?
I like it better because it's more like socializing kind of, I guess, but you're working like so everyone can help you and you can ask the teacher questions. So I feel like you don't struggle as much if you have questions. And
I agree with what she said. Like you get confused if you work by yourself at home. Like if you have a question, you can't really ask other than in Modo. But like if you are in class and you're working on your work, you can just ask Miss Maynard, or you can talk to another friend and say, "What did you get for this?" Or then you ask them, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, just do this and this," and then that's I figured it out.
So it sounds like you're having a really good experience. Do you have any classmates who, in terms of your peers, your friends, do they seem to be having similar experiences as you, or are there certain fellow students that you have that seem to really struggle with this environment compared to others in any way?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
it's like any other class. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think everybody just kind of goes with it, and everyone's starting to get used to it now.
How long did it take, do you think, for it to become more natural and something you're more used to?
I would say the first couple of chapters were a little confusing, but once Miss Maynard explained it to us and the video started to get more complicated, I think it became much easier.
Okay. And I just have one more question for you guys. And again, thank you so much for chiming in here and giving your perspective. It's really, really cool. And kudos to your amazing teacher for bringing you in here. That's fun. So my question is, I know from the session that Mrs. Maynard did that you guys have some sort of like schedule, like some sort of sheet every day that kind of keeps you on track. And I'm curious what that's like been for you to use that and how it helps you know where you're at. And also, if this makes sense, I'm curious if your learning experience, where you're at in the curriculum, in the text, in the content of the course, is any different from that of your peers, or if you're kind of all going through the same stuff at the same time.
Well, so what she does is we have projectors in her room, and she puts it's a Word document that has all the different things that we're doing in class. So usually we have a math starter, which is like a question for us to work on with our group to see if we all get it, and if we don't, you talk to your group to see how to figure it out. And then after that, it's usually your WISC, which is your question and your summary. So you go through that, and then if you have a question, your group can answer it, so you're understanding what's going on. And then usually you're in class and quick checks. I would say that we're all on the same page, whether it's you're doing your quick checks or you're doing your in-class work. You're usually all in the same section. One's not ahead or behind. You're always on the same section.
Okay.
And I think that the schedule that she makes, like for each of us, the paper copy to put in our binder, it really helps because every night, like everyone's doing the same thing and everyone can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be nice to be kind of going through the same stuff at the same time. I know I swear this is my last question, okay, for you guys. Just one more though. I'm curious, do you, maybe in comparison to other courses you're in, do you feel like you have a good pulse on what you understand and what you need to improve on in the course because of how things are scheduled?
I would say that everything's really, it's not slow, but it's really paced. I'm in the honors math class, we're both in the honors math class.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the class is sped ahead a little bit, but I would say that it's not too far ahead. I mean, we can all stick with it and we're all together, I think.
Yeah, and I think the videos help with that because every night we watch a video and then we do like in class, so we get to practice it and everything. So if you don't get it, you get it in class when we do our work.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting that feedback through the quick checks, right? So you're getting a sense of if you're getting it or not, and then you have the opportunity to ask more questions in class, right?
If you don't get it, go ask Miss Maynard if you're really stuck.
Well, awesome. Colin and Morgan, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation and letting us know how things are for you. I hope that you have a great day and that you get some chance at some point today to get outside in this beautiful weather. At least it's beautiful in Jackson where I'm at right now. So thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Thanks, guys.
So Mrs. Maynard, thank you so much for having them join. That was really cool.
Yeah, hopefully they've, I don't know, just their perspective and what they think sometimes is nice to hear it out of their mouths versus mine. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just wondering if we could talk a little bit about what a typical day looks like for you with your course, or if there is a typical day, or just maybe an example of what blended learning, what flipped instruction looks like for you.
I would say a typical day looks like kids come into class, having done something outside of class. More times than not, it's a video. My rule for myself is 8 minutes or less because they're in 8th grade. Sometimes in geometry they've done explorations, like with patty paper or cutting out triangles and piecing them together, just different physical things with paper. Sometimes they might read a little bit before watching the video. Like all the vocab, they got to go find on their own. I don't explain that to them. They can look it up in their iBook. They can go on the web. They can find that out wherever, and then come and I'll do a couple examples. So when they walk into class, they have the basics. Maybe not the deeper pieces to a lesson, but just the basics behind the math. And then we usually do a warm-up, just kind of where are you at, or something I know that they need to review algebraically, or some kind of previous skill that I want to make sure they have for the lesson. And then a lot of times it's just there's an agenda on the board and they need to get through those pieces. And I really don't care what order they go in. There's kind of a logical order of practice before you assess yourself. But sometimes when it's a deeper concept, then I will do a little bit of face-to-face time with them. Just a couple of days ago, we were doing area of sectors and circles. And so they had one hard problem with a goat trying to graze around a barn that they had to solve. So sometimes it's one deeper question that they have to break into different parts and really think about that they're doing in class. And because it's math, I do think they need to practice. So part of their in class is some of that rote practice, and some of it's more basic problems, and some of it is the harder application questions. And then they have a quick check, and that quick check is on a website called thatquiz.org. And they can take it when they want. They don't have to take it in class. They can take it at home if they have internet access, which all but I think 3 of my students do. And they just, by this point in time in the year, really need to, they just advocate for themselves and say, I got to do it in class, or I need a paper copy, that kind of thing. And so that's done on their time, and it's due by test day. So they can retake those until they get an 80%. And go from there with that. I think I gave you kind of my typical day. The only thing I think I missed is that sometimes in class we'll do an activity. It's not just problems. Sometimes we'll get out pipe cleaners and bend them to make certain figures in geometry. In algebra, we'll get graphing calculators out, or a graphing calculator app on our iPad, and do some investigation kind of stuff there. So it's not just problems. Usually there's at least a little bit of problem work per section, but we do try to utilize that class time, which was the whole point of me wanting to do all of this, so that we can talk more in class, that we can do more work one-on-one in small groups. The kids talk more in math class now than they ever have. Because they sit in groups, they are forced every day to read their summaries that they write at their end of their notes, and to ask each other those questions. And that in itself to me is great, because sometimes they don't even come to me, they go to their peers. And that has built, just that relationship between them has been great.
So the learning community that's developed in and among your 8th graders is seemingly like really improved since you've done flipped instruction.
I do. I think it has. A lot of times they'll go to their peers before they come to me. And there's a couple of them that still want to just always come to me. But that has lessened so much. Like Colin and Morgan said, we'll go check with our classmates. We'll ask for help. And that's huge, that they have that comfort, that they can explain it to each other.
Yeah.
Those kids that are the ones that are always being asked for, come help me, their learning is getting even better because they're explaining it all the time.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a joint win-win situation for everyone when I get to be taken out of the equation. It's weird, but it's also great when I don't have to entertain those questions because they ask each other. Right.
And there's more space and room and time to do that because of the offset instruction online?
I think so, because they have time to process that. Even if it's just the basic math behind what we're going to move forward with, they have time. And even, Colin Morgan said we have questions sometimes during the video. That lets them really think about, what do I get and what don't I get? And so when they get to class the next day, they've written a question. I ask them at the end of every notes to write a summary, 1 to 2, 3 sentences, what did you learn about, and to write a question. And they go around in their groups, and the minimum that they can do is read those summaries aloud and then read the questions aloud. And I totally took that from Crystal Kirch out in San Diego. She kind of invented, or whatever you want to say, kind of promoted that. And, you know, the best thing is when I walk around to the groups and I say, what questions do you have? And they say, oh, I had some, but now I don't because my group answered all of those. So that's been a huge benefit that, okay, you had a question, but now your peers answered it. So again, they got their answer, their peer got to describe it one more time, so they're both benefiting from that explanation.
What have been maybe some other like advantages that you've been experiencing since experimenting with the flipped model?
I think one big advantage is just the relationships. It gives you time as you're sitting in a group of 2, 3, 4 kids, yes, to talk about math, but to also ask about the game they played last night, or, hey, the band just got back from festival and they're so excited because they got a 1, you know, or just that small talk that you can have while you're working. And that relationship piece with the kids is huge. When I talk to other teachers, you know, they'll grumble about a kid. He never does anything. He never works. He never turns anything in. In this classroom model, he's going to work in class. I've taken a lot of time. I've built that relationship. I've gotten him to now where he will, when he walks in the door, he will work his tail end off. Now, when he leaves, he might not do a lot. But that's okay, because he can, at the beginning of class, he can go sit in the hall or off to the side and watch his video and then proceed on. So he misses the rich discussion, which bugs me, but he's still getting it. You know what I mean? He's still getting that little bit of time learning it, and then he still gets the majority of his in-class done, and he's passing the class. He's not necessarily doing that in other classes because he tunes them out in class. He does nothing at home. And that's been a huge benefit too for that kid that grades bug me, but like that CD kid, that, you know, the kid that he's not going to get an A, he's not going to be a perfect, or she, they're not failing, but they're right on that borderline. This model has let them do a lot physically in school when home life is a wreck. When they've got to go home and they have no structure, they don't have time, they really can get everything they need here at school, which I couldn't do in front of class before.
Interesting. So the you mentioned that 3 of your students don't have internet access at home. What you're describing here, does it extend beyond just those 3 to students with who may also have internet at home but just have a difficult home life?
Oh yeah, that's huge. I mean, the list is super big. You've got the no internet issue, but then you also we have one-to-one iPads in class.
Okay.
We also have a couple of parents who have said our child is not bringing home their iPad for whatever reason, for disciplinary reasons, they don't believe, whatever. So now you have kids that don't have their iPad at home, which for me, their video is embedded in an iBook, so they don't need internet. So if they can take their iPad home, they don't have to have internet to watch the video. The Quick Check is the only internet-based piece that they need from me. And like I said before, we work that in class. You also have those kids, though, that, when they get home, they're taking care of 3 or 4 siblings because mom and dad are working second shift. You have the kid that has that rough home life. You know, I've got a couple of students that they watch all their videos on the bus because they've got a 40-minute bus ride. Or they get dropped off at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's when they watch their video or do their exploration to get ready for class. And I've told them, you know, if you are ready the second you walk into class, I don't care when you get it done. I care that you try to take that time and be prepared for class. So yeah, there's a ton of kids that have X, Y, and Z as issues, but I feel like this gives them that flexibility of, I can do it early at school, I can do it when I'm being transported, I can plug my earphones in if my 3 little siblings are driving me nuts. You know, it gives them a little different opportunity than maybe what they would have done with doing 10 problems at home.
Right, absolutely. And I think what you've done with infrastructure in terms of each student having an iPad and them having the ability to watch the videos without internet access through what sounds like the iBooks. So I think a lot of teachers will be interested to learn more from you on how that came about, because obviously that's a big concern is the digital divide.
Yep. And that's, I mean, when I first was messing with the whole flip stuff 3 years ago, I just did reading out of their textbook for that reason. I didn't want to say you have to watch this video and have 5 kids not be able to. And when we went to iPads, Tony Delora is huge in iBooks, and he knows way more about that than I ever thought that is possible. But you know, he's leading that whole piece, honestly, nationwide, and that was an option. And once Caitlin came back from that conference and said, hey, I want to try videos, I thought, well, if we're going to do it, I want to put it in an iBook. So then I went on the whole figure out how to use iBooks Author on a Mac in order to make them.
Yeah.
And that was my solution. Now, that's not everybody's solution because they don't have iPads. But for me, with my environment, that's what worked. And that gave me the level the playing field if you can take your iPad home, which, you know, like I said, I've got a couple that can't take their iPad home, but I link all the videos on Edmodo. So luckily my kids that can't take their iPad home have internet access. You know, there's always those little things, but you learn ways around them. Here's a thumb drive. Plug this into the computer. Your videos are on that.
Right.
You have an iPod Touch. There you go. You can get internet on that. So you figure ways around it if you really want to do it.
Fantastic. Well, I want to be sensitive to your time because I know that you only have so much time here between classes, and you need to eat too and everything. So, but I am curious if you could tap into a little bit of some of the challenges that you've experienced.
Time to me is the biggest challenge of really to get a schedule set for even 1 week. That is tough to think about. I need these in-class practice things. I want to design an activity. I want to dig deeper into this one to get enough so that it's varied, so it's not the same exact thing every day. That it takes time to do that, and me personally want it done for at least a week. To me, a whole chapter is unrealistic just because as much as you'd love to pull something out that you did last year, I don't. Things change. Kids change. They need it different ways. I think time is my biggest challenge of making videos, getting everything organized, having their guided notes ready with, I want to introduce it this way, but then move to this kind of question. That is the number one. The number, I don't know if it's number 2, but another challenge is keeping students motivated. Just, you know, I've got some that they're just workhorses. They love it. They love to learn. They come in every day, boom, boom, boom. And then you've got the others that are like, what? So-and-so said what at lunch? I can't focus. I mean, but it's great. They're 13. They're hormonal things running around. And because there's that unstructuredness to class, you got these 3 things you got to do. What order are you going to do them in? That can be a challenge. I mean, I'm running around just kind of, what are you working on? Okay, how can I help you? What problem are you doing? Are you done with this? Remember, look at the agenda. Sometimes that's tough. Yeah. Because I don't have all of their attention, which is also a good thing. Those that can work can go, and those that I need to be with, I can go be with. I think, you know, that's another challenge. I think sometimes other teachers look at it as, is it structured? Is it not? Do they just watch a video and do nothing? So trying to get them to realize, because they don't see the in-class. They hear the videos when the kids are in the hallway. They might see a kid watching a video in another class, but they don't see what I do in class. So I think a challenge, too, is to try to get other teachers to realize what we do in class is a lot better than what it used to be. But but they don't see that every day.
Right. So, how about parents' perspective and administrator perspective? Is that similar? I am so lucky. Greg Eating, my principal, is amazing. He is so supportive of everything I do, and he'll even push me, have you thought about this? And he'll, you know, come ask me a question, and then I'll be like, now I got to try something different. You know, parent-wise, like I said, this is my 2nd full year, and I've not had a parent complain. I mean, I've had one parent this year that will not let their kid use a computer at home.
for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And so I've tried to get them to realize the value of letting her watch it for 8 minutes, but they're not even complaining about the whole process. They just get frustrated that, you know, she's not prepared. I'm like, well, if she could watch the video, she could be prepared.
Yeah.
But and so, I mean, the parents for the most part really appreciate it. At conferences, you hear oh, it's so nice to meet you. I hear you so many times during the day, and now I get to put a name with that, or a face with that voice that I hear in my living room all the time. No, I mean, I honestly had a parent come in last year and say, I'm taking geometry right along with my son. He's struggling a little bit, so I sit down and watch the videos and write down the notes, and we work on the problems together. I mean, to think that now a parent is taking your class, one, that's a little like, but how cool is that
Yeah.
a parent can help? You know, one thing parents always say by about this time mathematically is, well, I can't help my kid anymore. This is great defense for me to say, you can just sit down right next to them and listen to the video, and then you'll understand it as well, and you can help. So it's been actually a positive tool for some parents because they can. If they're really going to help invest in their kids, they honestly could sit down, help their kid, listen with a video, and you know, parents have been really supportive. I send them an email at the beginning of the year and in my syllabus, giving just an overview. If you want more information, let me know, and they're fine with that.
Very cool. If you could tap in real quick to some of the things that they do in class, and some of the things that they do out of class.
So outside of class is primarily, one, it's a video with guided notes, or it's an exploration, or it's reading. It really comes from those three categories. And an exploration is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Fold this patty paper. What do you notice? Find patterns. Draw these things. Graph a bunch of lines. It's a lot of pattern work of what do you notice to try to get them to see something or just play with it a little bit before we actually go to the math. Reading, it'd be out of their textbook or maybe something that I found online that they just read to get an overview before we do it. In class, you've got your problem sets. This year, one of my personal goals was working more on vocabulary. So one thing I did with vocabulary is I do something called backs to front. So a pair of students, one person has their back to the front of the classroom so they can't see the screen or the board. And then one person faces the screen or the board. The person facing the front of the classroom has to describe what they see. So maybe it's a picture or maybe it's vocab words. So they have to describe it while the other person draws it or while the other person says the vocab words. So just working on vocabulary, I never would take time to do that before because I'd be lecturing or I'd be going through notes. Now they come in, we can work on the vocab because we have more time in class. So I've tried to do some more vocabulary pieces, and that's just one of the things. Sometimes they have activities. We were doing similar triangles. So draw a triangle with these 3 things. So they all try to draw a triangle with this side, this angle measure, another side. Now get up and go look at everybody's triangles. Oh, they're all the exact same. Oh, mine's bigger than everybody else's. Is that okay? So some of those pieces. Using apps on our iPads like Desmos.com. Desmos is a great website where we were doing parallel and perpendicular lines. So I would put a line up on mine and I would say, type in the equation of this line. Now you need to make a line that's parallel. So they can do it so quick, and it's nice, it's colored, they're nice and bold. They can change it really quick. Oh, mine's wrong. That's way better than plotting it out by hand because we've already done the hand things. Now we're moving on to, you know, parallel. So using some of those apps, I use Socrative, actually the new beta site, beta.socrative.com, all the time in class to gather information, formative assessment-wise. They have a great new quiz feature that I'll type up like 6 questions and send that to the class. Maybe it's a review day or right before a quiz or a test, and I know right now instantly what those students know and don't know. So I can go help, you know, person A, I can go help person B because you've got 4 wrong in a row. So I use that a decent amount in class just as my pulse check of where are we at, how are we doing, what do we need help with. like there's lots of talking in class. When you walk by, very seldomly is class quiet, which is a problem for some people.
Sure.
If it's quiet, I get nervous.
Right.
You know, there's lots of, you need to talk about your summaries. You need to answer these certain questions. You need to go back to your notes and look at 3D, and everybody needs to explain how they got what they got. So there's a lot more, and I guess I have to guide them because 8th graders don't naturally talk about math. So there's lots of prompts. There's lots of prompts. There's lots of, you need to write a question with what. You need to write a question with how. Just trying to get them to learn how to ask questions and what kind of questions to ask. So
yeah,
that's a glimpse at some of the in-class different games, you know, that we make up math-wise that we need to practice problems. Well, it's a lot better to practice it playing a game with dice than it is to just work on a worksheet. So some of that kind of stuff happens as well.
So you're saying like the students wouldn't be doing these things on their own, like you're having an influence on your students.
Oh yeah, I mean they don't naturally come in and say, so what did you get for this? Yeah, you gotta kind of push them a little bit.
Well,
yeah.
I asked that question because there's sometimes a fear among teachers when looking at online or blended learning about what is my role, and is my role like less valuable? And it obviously, from my perspective, it's more valuable, right?
It is. Yeah, because I mean, if you're giving them part of the instruction in some kind of technology way or off-site, you've got to figure out, do they get what you just did? You know what I mean? When they watch that video, when they read this, what did they get out of it? So you've got to somehow collect data. You've got to get them to ask questions, because if they don't know how to ask you for help, they're not getting what they need to. And so I think it's almost like you said, it might be even more important that you're showing them and teaching them those ways to get help when they're stuck.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like since flipping, you've had a lot more time and space to do a lot more active learning in the classroom, tactile, kinesthetic things that.
Yep.
Have you been seeing improvements in student outcomes in your courses since doing this?
You know, I haven't collected data.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my gut tells me I have less kids outright failing math. You know, if you look at like a grade, very few students are actually failing class because I know who they are, I know what they know mathematically, and I'm on those particular kids every day.
Sure.
I don't, you know, I mean, maybe a couple percentages here or there have increased, but I think the kid knows better what they know and don't know. A kid's not going to come up to me now and say, I don't get it. A kid's going to come up to me and say, I get how to find the arc length. I don't know how to find the area of a sector. They're going to ask better, more specific questions instead of just IDK. I don't see that anymore. I honestly think I saw that for the first time just about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and I was like, what? But they, I think, because of those quick checks too, they know I can do this type of problem, but I can't do this kind. And so I think they're a better learner. They're not just playing the games of studying and memorizing and just getting a grade. I think they're figuring out, how do I learn best? And how do I need to ask for help? So to me, that's an improvement. You know, whether it's in a test score or not, in the end, that's not my goal. My goal is that they're a better problem solver, that they can communicate better, and I think that piece they've done better.
And they're taking more ownership of these things.
They have to, because I say this is where you got to get. You know what I mean? And if you don't take your quick check, that's not my problem. Yeah. You know, if when you check your work, because the answer keys are posted in the back of my room, if you go back and copy it down, go for it. Great, you can copy. But come assessment time, do you really understand the content?
Right.
Nope, you don't.
Oh, very good. One quick question. It's obviously that you've done a lot of legwork in terms of creating these videos and learning iBooks Author and putting this all together. I'm sure it took a lot of time. One, have you used other resources, other videos besides one you've created yourself? And two, what's like advice for other teachers who are just beginning to tap into this in terms of workload?
I have not used other videos. I probably could. My kids want to hear me. They don't
Sure.
want to hear somebody else. They like how I explain it, and so I use my own. My advice for somebody is to find a way to make them efficiently for you. Camtasia Studio by TechSmith is great. Love it. But for me, it took too long to render. I could not, because I'm a procrastinator. I'm going to make 5 videos the night before I need to have them done. I'm not going to work ahead of time. I finally admitted that to myself, and it's much better. So I need a way that I can quickly make them. I
Sure.
can make them on Show Me or Explain Everything on my iPad.
Yeah.
And those I can get very, very quickly.
Yeah.
They don't have to see my face. I ask my kids, do you want my face in the video or not? They don't. So Show Me and Explain Everything, perfect. And now those videos are less size-wise, so they're quicker to save. They're quicker to upload into my iBook. You know, I mean, somebody that's never done this, I try to tell them, normally in a math class, you teach a couple lessons, you give a quick quiz assessment kind of thing, then you teach a couple more lessons. A great time to try this model is after you give a quiz. Because a lot of times you give a quiz over 3 sections, and then what are you going to do before the next day? A lot of times the teachers will give them busy work, or they'll give them nothing. Well, prepare a video, give them a reading, make up an exploration, give that to them after the quiz, and then try that the next day. Do something different in class, bring that together, and then you can go on to your old ways. But usually, once they do that one time, they kind of see, oh, the amount, I mean, yes, the kids need to be trained, and yes, it takes a long time, but those teachers that like the change and that want that best thing for those kids, they see that day all the conversations they have. And normally, those people that love teaching love the conversations with kids. And that right there will hook them. Is, you know, try it once or twice a chapter. And that's enough to hopefully get them sold on it. And then you realize, I got to do this. This is just incredible. And then you're had, because then that's all you do is make videos and make iBooks. And, you know, my own kids make appearances in my iBooks because I'm like, no, go away, I'm making a video right now. But it's just, it becomes part of, to me, what I now do. And that I'm there for my students night and day, and maybe and to other teachers argue that. Why do you help so much at home at night? Well, that's, learning doesn't quit at 2:30. Don't you want your students working at night? You know, and I tell my students, I put my own children to bed at 8. I'll check email after that. Don't expect a reply. And I think if you're upfront with those kids, they get that. So if you're starting this process, to me, you got to be honest. You got to also show your kids that you're making mistakes. I mean, I'd be like, oh, I should have thought about that. I just made a keynote and I didn't number the slides, and I'm trying to get the kids to go through them. Oh, I probably should have done that. And they're like, she's a learner. You know what I mean? She makes mistakes too, and it's okay. And I mean, I let them vote a lot of times. How do you like things? Do you like it this way? Do you like it that way? And ask them for input as you go. So, I mean, just managing your time is hard. Start small. Ask your kids, do you like it? Do you not? Ask your kids how you want it changed. And then, to me, you get a lot of great things in the end.
Heck yeah. And it sounds like you have a very supportive environment. Your principal is very supportive. That's great. And you're tapped into learning communities beyond the 4 walls of your room. Are you also seeing your colleagues where you're teaching starting to learn from what you're doing, and are you able to learn from some of your colleagues as well?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the people I learn from the most, honestly, are Tony, who I teach with. My principal helps a ton, and the connections I made on Twitter. I was anti, I'm not doing this, and then 2 years ago, some college professors, Dave Coffey and John Golden from Grand Valley, you know, I finally jumped on, and now I'm like, that is my life. I mean, you put a question out, and it's instantly you get that feedback, and you get answers like, how do I do this? 5 people are sending you how to do it. That is just, that's where I want our staff to go more is you've got to get hooked into Twitter. It's crazy. People think it's nuts, but it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yes, I think people seeing me around the building do different things have, little by little, they have. Our science teachers are big into inquiry, and that's something our whole district has done. But they've even, I need to make this video a couple times. Other math teachers in our building have done video stuff as well. Yes, they've given me support. I've given them support. They've been very helpful when I'm frustrated with stuff to kind of ground me a little bit. But they also will push me and ask those questions to move me forward. And it's surrounding yourself with people that will help you move forward. And I guess, the people I've connected with on Twitter are those outside of the box thinkers. They're pushing you when you're frustrated with all the crabbiness of education. You go there, and they kind of, the little Mishad group that I've connected with, they make you remember why you do this and continue that fight in that positive way. So, just that PLN kind of stuff, those people that you surround yourself with really helps you move forward. Even if the people on the other side of your classroom walls are not doing it, it's okay that I do. You know what I mean? And that, like I said, my principal helps every single day push me to do that. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that, because I've got people I've connected with on Twitter that say my principal won't let me do this. Like, what do you mean they won't let you do this? And that just breaks my heart. If somebody told me I had to go back to lecture every single day and give traditional 30 problems at home, I don't think I could do it. I think it would be so hard.
Has flipping your classroom the way that you have changed the way you view instruction and the role of the instructor?
Oh, huge, yeah. I mean, I look at how I taught the first 14 years of my life and think, oh my gosh, those poor kids. But, I mean, it does. I mean, your instructor should be there to guide you, not be that person that's telling you everything. If we want kids to be these 21st century learners that are problem solvers, if all I'm doing is spoon feeding them, I'm not helping them do that. So if I give them tools, short video, some exploration, some problems to try, if I give them those pieces, then they can ask questions. They can try to get through it on their time, asking the things they need to ask for them individually. Sure. And I think they're much better off that way. And as an instructor, I'm there to help instead of there to, you got to do this, and then step 4, and then step 5. I think that's better. So, yeah, it has. It's totally changed.
What do you wish you had known when you first started flipping?
I wish I would have known how awesome it is. I mean, I guess I wish I would have realized it earlier. I wish I would have realized how you can make those connections, and once you get there, how powerful it is. I wish somebody would have pushed me sooner to do it, maybe. The other thing I think I wish I would have known is more that relationship piece. That so much of flipping is, I mean, yes, they talk about relationships, but they talk more about the process. And they don't tell you how those relationships with those kids change. I mean, I've always had a great rapport with kids. I feel like I've always tried to connect, but you can connect so much more because you physically talk to those kids every day. There's not a kid that comes in my room that I don't verbally exchange words with one-on-one. Before, when I would lecture and stuff, there'd be kids that would walk in, sit down, those little quiet ones, take their notes, do their problems, and leave. And I'd never see their eyeballs. I'd never go up and have a conversation with them because I was up teaching. You know what I mean? And you're dealing with more behavior problems. This is just, I'm not. You know what I mean? The relationship piece is huge with those kids.
Cool. Well, seriously, thank you so much for taking time out of a crazy, busy, typical day.
Right.
To talk with us, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. All
All right, see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.